Good afternoon, all of you. How are you all? Have you read the first part of the fertilizers? In that part, we have discussed what are the fertilizers, then what type of fertilizers we are having, we can understand its classification. Then what are the requirement of a fertilizer in the requisite advantages and disadvantages. Now, I brought for you all the part 2 of the fertilizer unit. In this, we go for role of the elements in the fertilizers and the manufacturing. So let's start. What is the role of elements in the fertilizers? The elements are those which are very much essential for the growth of the plants, like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So we can categorize the elements into the various type. The first category is essential elements. The essential elements are those elements which are very essential to the plant. Essential means which are very important and plays the important functions. Without that, the growth of the plant is affected, and with the deficiency it causes various disease. So they perform the important functions like metabolic process, in the metabolic reactions involved in the plants. The second most important function is cell permeability. Permeability means how the penetration takes place in the cell membrane. So to provide the permeability to the cell membrane, these elements are responsible. The third important function is osmotic concentration. Osmotic means the concentration of a liquid which goes for maintaining by the essential elements, as well as in performing the function of enzymes to activate the enzymes, coenzymes, macromolecules like amino acids, nucleic acids, and also the buffers to maintain the pH of the fluid. So these all are the important functions which can be provided by the essential elements. Why they are called essential elements? As we understand that they require very importantly in the growth of the plants for performing various functions, and essential elements which are used in a higher amount or a greater amount means the greater percentage is required for performing the functions. Such essential elements are called macronutrients. So macronutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, these are required in a higher quantity or a greater amount. So that type of essential elements are called macronutrients. So one of the macronutrient is nitrogen, which is required in the plant 1 to 5%. So it has the various function of the nitrogen. It is a very important nutrient required for the plant. So it impart dark green color. Required in greater amount, you are seeing that it is 1 to 5% required. Now, how the plant use the nitrogen? You know the nitrogen is fixed by the plants in the form of various ions, and the reaction is called nitrogen fixation. So it is absorbed in the form of nitrate, NO3 negative. Mostly it is absorbed in the form of NO3 negative, then NO2 negative, that is nitrite, and then it can be absorbed in the form of ammonium ion. So these are the three ions by which the nitrogen is absorbed in the soil, which affects the growth of the plants. So nitrate absorption is greater than nitrite and then ammonium ion. All parts of the plants need the nitrogen, but mostly it is needed by meristematic and metabolically active cells. Meristematic tissues, we can understand the division of where the division of the tissue is required, that is meristematic tissues, and as well as metabolically active cells. The nitrogen is very essential there. For example, in the vitamins, proteins, nucleic acids, hormones, in each of them, the nitrogen is a most important constituent. So this is a very important macronutrient, that is nitrogen. The next is phosphorus. The phosphorus requirement is 0.1 to 0.4%, and it is absorbed in the form of H2PO4 negative or HPO4 di negative in the soil. It is present in the cell membranes, also present in nucleotides, nucleic acids, in phosphorylation reaction. It involves, what's the phosphorylation reaction? Which involves the addition of phosphorus. It is also a constituent in proteins. Now the next important macronutrient is potassium, which is required in the plant 0.1 to 0.5%. It is absorbed in the form of potassium ion K positive. It is required for again the meristematic tissues, buds, leaf and root tips. So whatever the growth is there in the tissues, buds, leaf and root tips, the potassium plays the role. It helps to maintain the anion and cation balance. As in a human body is also electrolyte or the charge balance is there, the same function is there in the plant. It also maintains the charge anion to cation balance. And again, important role of the potassium is it is used in opening and closing of stomata, which is also called turgidity. The opening function or the closing function of the stomata is called turgidity. So it plays a very important role, the potassium, in the opening and closing of stomata. It is also used in the protein synthesis. So we have studied three important macronutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. The criteria of essentiality. The Arnon scientist has represent what's the criteria of essentiality in the plants or essentiality of elements we are talking about. So deficiency of the element makes it impossible for the plants to complete the vegetative or reproductive stages of its life cycle. That essential word the Anand scientist has explained here, that if the elements are not in that quantity or that element is absent somehow in the plant, it is impossible for the plant to complete all the vegetative or reproductive stages. The life cycle stages in the plant cannot be completed if any of the essential element is deficient in the plant. So the second important point of essentiality is the deficiency is specific to the element in the question and as such can be prevented or corrected only by supplying that particular nutrient element to the plant. The second important point Anand has suggested that for essentiality of the elements means if like nitrogen is absent or potassium is absent totally in the plant, so that cannot be covered or corrected by any other nutrient. Means deficiency of nitrogen remains the nitrogen deficiency. It cannot be corrected by using some other elements. So for some elements this point is very correct, but for other elements like molybdenum, here it is written molybdenum. If it is molybdenum element is absent in the plants, we can fulfill its property by using vanadium. So after some time, this second point Anand has explained for the essentiality becomes invalid. For some of the elements, it is appropriate, but for the other elements, it proves to be invalid. The examples are molybdenum. We can use in place of molybdenum vanadium. For the chlorine, we can use in place of chlorine bromine. In case of potassium, we can use rubidium. So for some of the elements, this point proves to be invalid, what Anand has suggested. The third point is the element must have the direct influence on the plant and must be directly involved in the nutrition and metabolism of the plants. So the elements, essential elements directly influence and affects the metabolic reactions and the nutrition level in the plants. So these are the three important points of criteria of essentiality of the elements in the plants. We can say there are total 17 essential nutrients which are required by the plants. So as we have talked about nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, so that they come in macronutrients you have seen in greater amount. We can here understand how much greater amount is required for the macronutrients. We are saying like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur. These are called macronutrients because they require in a greater amount. Greater amount means they require greater than 1 ppm. So 1 parts per million. And micronutrients are those nutrients which are required in a lesser amount, or we can say less than 1 ppm. So what are the micronutrients which is required in a lesser amount, like boron, chlorine, iron, copper, molybdenum, zinc, nickel, etc. The basic nutrients always remain the same, that is which is required in a very high amount, 96%. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, these are the basic nutrients which is required by the plant in a very high proportion, that is you are seeing 96%. Now we move to the another macronutrient role, that is calcium. We have seen nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Now we move further in the macronutrient, that is calcium, which is required for the plant growth, that is 0.2 to 0.1%. What is the role of calcium? It is the structural component or the constituent of cell wall. A most important function of the calcium is it is a constituent of the cell wall, which is a most important part of plants. Highly required in telophase for the cell plate formation. It neutralizes organic acids. It is essential in activating the growing point, especially the root tips. It is very essential for the growth of the root tips. So calcium is again a macronutrient required for the plants. Now the next is magnesium. How much magnesium is required? 0.1 to 0.4%. It is again a constituent of a chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a pigment which is responsible for the photosynthesis. So it is a constituent of chlorophyll, chromosomes, polyribosomes. It is a carrier of phosphorus also. It's again an important function where the phosphorus is going from one place to the another, performing its function. The role of magnesium is there for a carrier of phosphorus. It promotes the formation of oils and fats. It translocates the starches from one place to the another. Now next is sulfur, which is required 0.1 to 0.4% as same as magnesium. It creates a type of fragrance, aroma and the cell. So the fragrance, the smell, that is also called aroma. It creates by the sulfur. It helps in the chlorophyll formation. It promotes the nodule formation, and also it is a constituent of amino acid. So, as we have discussed all the macronutrients role, now we move to the micronutrients role. We have seen which is required in a lesser amount, that elements are called micronutrients, less than 1 ppm. So, let's see here the first role of the micronutrient, that is iron, which is required 100 to 500 milligram per kg of whole plant. It acts as a catalyst in the nitrate reductase activator in the synthesis of chlorophyll, also act as a oxygen carrier. The next micronutrient is manganese. 25 to 500 milligram per kg of the whole dry plant. The role of respiration and the structure of chloroplast. It is essential to control the formation of chlorophyll. Excess of the manganese results to the crinkle leaf disease. If we have the excess of the manganese to use in the plant, it results into the disease. Means the appropriate quantity, means in a lesser amount the manganese is required, do not have in excess. The next micronutrient is zinc, that is 20 to 150 milligram per kg of the dry plant. It is essential for water uptake. It is required for biosynthesis of hormones. The next micronutrient is copper, which is required 5 to 20 milligram per kg in a very less amount. It is required in the flowering and development of grains. It also takes parts in the electron transfer in the plants. The next is molybdenum, that requires 0.2 to 2 milligram per kg of the dry plant. Role in the nitrogen fixation. Absorption of the nitrogen in the form of various ions. We have seen nitrate, nitrite or ammonium ion. So molybdenum plays an important role in the nitrogen fixation. Then we have a nutrient chlorine, 100 to 500 milligram per kg, which is required for primary photosynthetic reactions. Initially, the photosynthesis taking place in the plants. For that, the chlorine plays the important role. The next micronutrient is nickel, which is required 1 to 10 milligram per kg, which is essential for hydrogenase, methyl reductase, and urease activities. All these are the enzymes and that regulates the nitrogen metabolism. So we have understood the different roles of the various essential elements in the plants. Now we move to understand the various fertilizer manufacturing. So manufacturing of ammonia. This is a most important topic to understand how we go for producing or manufacture the ammonia. The synthetic ammonia is manufactured by the Haber's process, a famous process to synthesize the ammonia. So Haber's process is, you are seeing this reaction, reversible reaction. Nitrogen 1 mole react with the 3 mole of the hydrogen to produce 2 mole of the ammonia. It's a reversible reaction, and here the catalyst role is of iron. And what's the role of molybdenum here? The role of molybdenum is a catalytic promoter. So enhance the rate of the catalyst we are using. So this is a flow sheet of the Haber's process in which we can understand all the steps and all the equipment's role in manufacturing the ammonia. So the first of all we require the nitrogen. From where we get the nitrogen? Nitrogen is get from the air. It is separated from the air. It is in the higher percentage. It is taken from the air. Then the hydrogen is taken from the natural gas. So the gases should be collected and then it is passed through the compressor. What's the role of compressor? The role of the compressor is it should go for compressing the gas for the easy flow. Then it is passed through the oil filter. The gases should contain some oily substances which should be removed in the oil filter. So oily substances are removed in the oil filter. Then it is passed through the feed guard. So what's the role of feed guard here? The gases like carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide should be converted into methane. And the gas argon should be removed in the feed guard because it is very important to remove argon gas because it acts as a poison in the reaction of the formation of ammonia. So after the feed guard we have a purified gas. The purification done. The oily substances are removed, the gas is converted into methane and the argon gas is removed. That is very important. So now your gas is purified and passed through the reactor where the temperature is 500 to 600 degrees centigrade. At this temperature, the 1 mole of the nitrogen and 3 mole of the hydrogen get reacted in the presence of iron as a catalyst and molybdenum as a catalytic promoter and convert into the ammonia gas. So ammonia gas, there are some shower of the water in the reactor. When the gas is formed, that shower condenses the gas and collected at the bottom, which is passed through the another chamber where they are again the water pipes are there, the coiled water pipes you are seeing below the reactor. So it liquefy your gas. So liquefy, it is again pass through the separator. So if the gas is whole liquefied, it is collected in a tank. If some gas is not liquefied, the gas is there. The separator plays a role of separating the gas and the liquid. The liquid comes down and collected in the tank, and the gas should go to the ammonia refrigerant on the left side. The gas is passed through the ammonia refrigerant where it is allowed to cool. If the separator allows to separate if some gas left behind. Here from the water chamber it is coming. If all the gas is liquefied, no problem. If some gas is left, the separator separates the liquid from the gas and send the gas to the ammonia refrigerant where it is cooled down and converted into liquid. So simultaneously the liquid coming from the ammonia refrigerant and separator collected into a spherical tank. Still, if some of the gas left out, it passes through the centrifuge pump which is above the ammonia refrigerant. This passes through the centrifuge pump and again sent to the reactor. If some gas is left behind still, we send it in the reactor for the reaction. And this how the utilization of gas takes place, and the conversion of the ammonia, it goes for collecting in a spherical tank. So this how the manufacturing takes place. So the description what I have explained, in the flow sheet diagram, the following points are written here. So in Haber's process, firstly the nitrogen taken from the air, then hydrogen taken from the natural gas. It is collected one place, the gases are compressed for the easy flow, then it is passed through the oil filter to remove oily substances, then it is passed through the feed guard to convert carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide into the methane, and argon gas is removed which act as a poison. That's why it is very important to remove it. Now purified gas passed through the reactor for the reaction in the presence of iron catalyst and molybdenum as a catalytic promoter at 500 to 600 degree centigrade. Ammonia gas is formed which is liquefied underwater. Then it is passed through the separator. What's the role of separator? Separator again separates the gas to the liquid. The gas which cannot be liquefied passed to the ammonia refrigerant and then it is collected in the liquid form. Still, the gas which cannot be liquefied can be sent through the centrifuge pump and passed to the reactor for the reaction. And finally, the ammonia gas is collected in a spherical tank. Thank you and stay safe at home.